Today's cover art is the governor of Colorado signing Bill SB 217, which removes qualified immunity for police officers. It does some other stuff, but it removes qualified immunity for police officers. So it's time to talk about qualified immunity a little bit, because I've been back and forth on the issue of qualified immunity a little bit. At first, from my hearing of it, I was like, oh, that sounds bad. Then I read a little bit more. I'm like, that sounds fine. So why don't we just unravel this a little bit so that people can understand what it is? Because it's thrown around like, people throw qualified immunity around like, police officers aren't responsible for any of their actions. Like, that's not true, and it's not what qualified immunity is. So first of all, qualified immunity is a Supreme Court precedent. They said it in 1967, and it applies to all government officials, not just cops, with discretionary behavior. So not like clerks who are filling out forms and stuff, but if you have to use your judgment in a situation, that's when it applies. The government is still liable for your behavior in those circumstances, but you personally aren't liable. And the idea is this was a response to a real problem. And anyone who's over 40 has seen this. The frivolous lawsuit culture has gotten completely out of control. Right? I mean, since the time that we were young, Carrie, when, you would, I don't know, ride bikes without helmets and, sit in cars without seatbelts, like the safety Nazis have won. And not only that, everything is everyone else's responsibility. This is, again, by the way, as an aside, this is one of the reasons culture matters more than laws, because culture is in the courts. Juries behave off of cultural norms, not laws. Sorry, what were you saying?
Yeah, yesterday I was blessed with being able to go to a pool on this trip, and the diving board is one of these new diving boards that doesn't have any spring in it really at all. And remember when we were kids, there's a lot of spring in the diving board, and the person was telling me that it's hard. They don't make those anymore. You can't get one even if you want one, because they don't want to be liable for any accidents that happen from the extra spring in the board. I'm like, come on, can we just get a fun diving board? Okay.
Right. So the safety Nazis who we've talked about before, they're ruining everything. But there is a real problem in our culture of absolutely frivolous lawsuits. Right. There's a reason that the 5-gallon bucket has like a warning on it about not throwing your toddler in it upside down and filling it with water. Like, yes, only a moron would do that, but some lawyer decided that disclaimer is necessary on the side of the bucket because you're going to sue the bucket company because you people are idiots. Not people on our chat, but like these people are suing this, and juries will award them stuff. So
this is like I will let you get back to the point, but for just another frivolous aside, this is like the nurses who have told me that they've had to put, because they get so many kids and adults in the ER with random things shoved in their orifices, that they have to put on kids' toys now, like, don't put this ladder in your butt. Like, why are we catering to the dumbest?
Right. Well, the reason for that is, as much as I would love to blame lawyers, the reason for that is society, our culture, is full of a bunch of morons who will vote on a jury to award $3 million to the mom of the toddler who stuck the ladder up his butt because it didn't say don't put the ladder up your butt, and like got injured. Like, that's why. You can only have, if you've got a low enough IQ and you've got a bad enough culture, suddenly this is what happens. So look, the frivolous lawsuit issue is real. Now imagine as a police officer, you're doing your duty, you're making an arrest. It almost doesn't matter what you do. Like you make an innocent error, or someone trips and falls, or you don't do something exactly right, or you think it's this way but it's not, whatever. You need, in order to actually recruit anyone to have that job, they interact with the public all the time. Mostly it's a lot of times they have to use force, which is just like a very difficult situation to be in to judge. So there's a lot of discretion that needs to be used as a police officer. And so you need some level of immunity. And so what qualified immunity is not blanket immunity. It is, you are immune from civil suits unless the plaintiff shows that the official violated, quote, clearly established statutory or constitutional rights of which a reasonable person would have known. So that's an objective standard. It means a reasonable person looking at this would say, well, you knew you were violating his constitutional rights, or you knew you were violating some well-known statute. Therefore, you actually are liable, officer. So that prevents the officer from doing anything that's like clearly like, I'm just going to come up and punch you for no reason. And like, you should be liable for that because that's clearly violating both a statute and the Constitution. So it's not like they're not liable at all. They're just not liable in civil lawsuits for stuff where they have to use their discretion and they didn't clearly violate some statute or the Constitution, right? So there was discretion involved, and a reasonable person uses their judgment. And you can't just sue them for that all the time, because otherwise they're going to get judgments against them constantly for every interaction. Because, by the way, you're sticking them out to like, go deal with the criminal element of society. Enjoy the lawsuits, right? Like, it makes sense from that perspective. Now, what's happened, apparently, again, juries can be wrong both ways. When culture's bad, it's often bad on multiple levels. Apparently, the qualified immunity argument has been used more increasingly in the past to justify excessive force and deadly force that wasn't justified, right? And so that's where the opposition to it's coming in. People are saying like, oh, well, it's been used in these cases to justify excessive force. It shouldn't have been. They shouldn't be immune. Now, remember, the city's still in charge. Like, the city's still liable. The government's still liable. It's just we're talking about the individual is not liable in these cases. And that's the argument against it. So that's what's been going back and forth. And the governor of Colorado signed this bill 217. And he is removing qualified immunity from police officers he's saying you're explicitly liable. Now, I think a lot of officers, from what I can tell, are walking off the job, right? Of course, I would walk off the job. Like, yeah, of course you're going to walk off the job. Because now you are, every interaction with the public, you are potentially, imagine going to McDonald's and like, if you serve the burger and it's the wrong thing, you're personally liable and they can sue you for like what the hell, right? Or like the burger patty, like, doesn't matter, like the burger patty has a thing in it and you're personally liable, or you gave them onions and they're allergic and you didn't realize it, like, you're personally, like, it's ridiculous. But that's the, and that's the situation you're putting in. And I was thinking about this, why this discussion bothers me so much, because I have friends on both sides of this. I absolutely, as someone who's like a voluntarist, I absolutely have friends who are like, abolish the cops, do away with the cops, like, go this route. I think that's tactically a stupid thing, but we both have the same end in mind, which is like a voluntarist society. I don't think that's the right way to go about it, which I can talk about sometime if you want. And I also have friends who are cops, right? And who are like, this, we need law and order. We like this. We can't be treated like this. Blah blah blah. And so I get it. And I was trying to figure out like, why does this really bother me so much? And here's the reason that it really bothers me, because ultimately I don't want the police enforcing a whole bunch of stuff. Even if we just roll back to like a minarchist perspective, police really have very little role, right? They have very little role in society at that point. They're arresting, murderers and rapists and whatever. They're not out arresting everyone for everything. Here's why it really bothers me, Carrie. This entire qualified immunity conversation that we're having is all about shifting responsibility onto the lowest level. I don't mean this in a bad way, but the lowest level government employees away from the higher levels. Qualified immunity applies to government officials, right? So it's not the mayor that's getting in trouble. It's not the police chief. It's not all the bureaucrats. It allows all the officials to get away, to operate with complete immunity. So they can stand in front of the public and they can say, just like the Fulton County DA, right? Tasers are deadly weapons. Tasers aren't deadly weapons. They can say whatever they need to say. They have zero liability. They're not responsible for the outcome of anything. They can set up impossible situations so they can go out in public and promise A and not A at the same time to the public, right? And then they can set up a situation for law enforcement where the cops literally have a no-win situation, and all the responsibility for everything is rests on the lowest level officer who's just trying to do his job. Like, it all rests on him. So they can say, go fight crime for us, but if anything upsets the criminals or their families, you're personally liable.
So just to summarize for people who zone out like me, you think qualified immunity is bad?
I think I was a little bit more nuanced than that.
I'm asking you to summarize, though. I'm asking you to summarize.
Don't zone out. We have real discussions on this channel. You can't just zone out.
No, I'm zoned in. But just to summarize, because we do a little you think it's bad because it's the little people who actually do the jobs who are being made liable for anything that the company or the organization does that the higher ups find wrong.
Well, I'm saying that, so first of all, qualified immunity is when they are not liable for things.
Okay.
Just to be clear. So qualified immunity gets them out of being liable. The precedent of qualified immunity is supposed to apply to every government official, not just the cops, but the mayor.
Okay.
Right? Everyone. Right? But the discussion that we're having now is we have a high level of official that can speak out of both sides of their mouth and say, tasers are deadly, tasers aren't deadly. They can then, to their underlings, set up impossible circumstances for actually operating, because they can literally have contradictions that they're stating publicly and tell them to do the contradictions, behave in this contradictory manner. So now the cop goes out and he's faced with, here are the two options, right? Let's choose this Rayshard Brooks guy. Here's the edict to the cops: go arrest people for drunk driving. If that person happens to resist arrest and throw your partner to the ground, giving him a concussion, and steals the taser and runs away and shoots the taser at your face, you have two options. In the first option, you can try and stop him, but if you happen to kill him, the fault's 100% yours and you might face the death penalty. Or you can let him go. But if he hits you with the taser, he'll be able to steal your weapon and use it against you and use it against your partner and possibly anyone else. So you might also face the death penalty there. But if you survive it, that will also be your fault for whatever damage. It's like, well, there's a no-win situation. The cop is in a no-win situation at that point. And what I don't like about this is that, I know we're reading books about, I'm reading books. I think we're supposed to be reading Ordinary Men, which I haven't started yet, which I will. We'll have a book club discussion about it this weekend.
This coming week, guys.
Yeah, I did read Stanley Milgram's book about authority, because I wanted to really understand the Milgram experiment very well. And we don't have to get into this right now, but okay, I personally don't want to live in a world where people delegate their moral authority to other people. That's not a world I'm looking for at all. However, we do live in that world. And most people, I think, actually do want that. That's what you ask for. And like when an authority figure says to do blah blah blah, the soldier or the subordinate is supposed to say, yes, that's the world that I don't want, but a lot of people want. That's the world we live in, right? And in the Milgram experiment, for example, 2/3 of the people just listened to the authority, no matter what. They were hurting someone, 2/3 of the people went all the way to give them the maximum voltage.
Right.
We can talk about that, right? So we live in this world. And if you want to have a world where moral responsibility is removed from the actor and given to the decision maker that's at a different level of authority, then or the agency, the responsibility for that decision, then that level of authority needs to take responsibility for failures, right? So the example would be like if a general says to a soldier, "Hey, bomb this spot," right? And the soldier's like, "Okay," and he presses a button, he bombs the spot, right? And then later, someone's like, "Oops, that was a wedding full of innocent civilians," right? We have a situation where the general's saying, "These soldiers are out of control." Right? Like, no, general. You told him, we live in a society where you told him to obey your orders. We're all in agreement. I mean, I'm not, but we're living in a society where we're in agreement that he should just blindly obey your orders. You told him to do it. He's trusting that the person is a threat or that's the enemy. He pressed the button. You can't blame the soldier for this. And we have a situation now where these mayors, like the removal of qualified immunity, the governor's not saying, I'm making sure that all the bureaucrats are excluded from qualified immunity. We're all going to be held accountable for our crappy policies and everything that we do. When we violate the Constitution, you'll be able to sue us in civil court. He's not doing that. He's saying, oh yeah, hey, thanks guys on the front line who have zero control over any of the policies, any of the laws, anything going on. You guys, you're liable for everything. You have no qualified immunity anymore. But the city council has qualified immunity. We can do whatever we want. And I don't, again, I don't want this situation where people don't have moral authority. But if you're gonna, because I think it's dangerous and immoral, and ultimately, I think it falls apart. I don't think it's sustainable to build a population of automatons who just obey authority. But you don't start getting rid of that system by only assigning the moral responsibility to the people at the bottom rung of the ladder, like an excuse to people making the rules. And that's what's happening. That's this discussion. And that's why it pisses me off right now. And I finally was able to nail down why I was angry about this qualified immunity. It's not that there are vagaries. It's not that maybe there could be some reforms. It's not that there's bad things that happen sometimes. It's not that it's not that I don't want to even look at the system. It's that where you're looking in the system is you're voting for the same jerks like this DA over and over and over again, and you're punishing the guy on the street who's literally just most of the guys literally just trying to keep you safe. That's all they're trying to do. Yeah, there's some bad apples everywhere, but you're punishing the wrong people. That's what's pissing me off about this. And the more you punish the cops and the less you punish the authority, the more the authority is just they're operating with impunity now. They can do whatever they want. Whatever they want. They can say whatever they want. They can have contradictory rules. They can tell people to behave in different ways, and they don't get in trouble. The guy on the street gets in trouble. He loses his livelihood. He faces the death penalty, not you. And that's what pisses me off. Sorry, that was more nuanced than I don't like it.
I just kind of sometimes it's not what you're talking about. It's just that it's more of like a lecture, and I'm not engaged as a conversation because I'm having trouble.
I rant sometimes. I know.
Yes, and I like your rants. It's just sometimes, especially with something where I just want to get to the heart of what is qualified immunity. And I know people in the chat were making fun of me. It's funny because somebody said I seemed particularly articulate today, and then I seemed really ditzy right after. But it's just because I don't. Yeah, I have to be in a conversation sometimes to really pick up what you're laying down. Not always. Sometimes lectures are more, yeah.
It's laid down. Pick it up.
I'll pick it up later.
You can pick it up later, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Do you have an opinion on qualified immunity?
I don't. I still don't know what it is.
You don't know what it is? That's just you zoning out. I clearly at the beginning started with what it was.
No, I looked it up on Wikipedia while you were talking. So it's basically...
I love you, Carrie.
What?
Go ahead. If you didn't understand what it was from the beginning, then maybe other people didn't. Why don't you explain what qualified immunity is for the people that are listening in chat who also...
Look, this is what I look. If you can't, I think this is good practice for engaging.
Yeah, I'm failing. So go ahead.
So qualified immunity is the practice of saying that public servants, people who are public servants, are not liable for damages, right? Correct? No?
Not exclusively. They're only liable if what they did was unconstitutional or against a well-known statute, and they behaved in a way that a reasonable person wouldn't have behaved. And they're in a position where they have it's a discretionary position, right? So it's not something formulaic they're supposed to do, but they have to make a judgment call. So if they make a judgment call, and that judgment is clear violation of the Constitution or violation of a statute that everyone should kind of know, then they are liable. But as long as they stay within those bounds, then they are not liable in civil court. But the government still is liable. Their employer is liable, but they are not personally liable. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense.
Okay.
I do not have an opinion on it yet.
Okay.
I need to read more about it, and I need to go back and listen to your rant a couple of times.
Okay. So.